Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you all this morning, and I am currently here in Tennessee, and this will be, I don't know, the fifth or sixth time I've presented this module. Jamie has informed me that I've got a really good, experienced, highly skilled audience here today, so I'm expecting a lot of good interaction and feedback from you. But my name is Matthew Denton. I am the East Region Team Leader for the Soil Health Division, and I'm in my fourth week in this new position, and I'm excited to be working with the division, and again, excited to be with you all this morning. I'm in my 19th year with the agency. I've served 12 years as a district conservationist, most recently 5 years as an area resource conservationist in the western part of the state here in Tennessee, and worked with programs mainly in the last 3 years of that role. And I also get the privilege of working a small farm here with my family. It's been in our family for over 100 years, and we grow vegetables, row crops, corn, wheat, and soybeans, and raise beef cattle and small ruminants as well. I've obtained my certified crop advisor license in the early 2000s, and I'm also a master beef and small ruminant producer here in the state. So I'm really proud of that heritage and what we do here on our farm. And I took this course in 2014 and got the opportunity to go to North Dakota and hear some experts up there talk about soil health and see their fruits of their labors on the Menoken farm, and it was just an excellent experience. And in fact, it had such a profound impact on me that I made some serious changes in what I was doing, both personally on the farm and professionally, and immediately got to working through my local soil conservation district, and saw the need for local information and interaction with producers here. I certainly could share what I saw in North Dakota, but in Tennessee, we get about 40 inches more precipitation than they do in North Dakota. So obviously some drastic differences in rainfall and climate and whatnot. So again, wouldn't take anything for that experience. And I hope that this course provides you a similar experience and going back to your local offices and working with your producers and farmers. So I'll start sharing my presentation. We're gonna talk about the principles of soil health during this module. All right, soil health principles. And if I look at this is all these modules are important, obviously, for this training, but from a foundational standpoint, this is one of the most important modules. So I know a lot of this will be review for many of you, but it's important, and I often look back at the principles in what I do with the division, but even prior to that, in working with producers at the area and field level and state level, they're vital for what we are trying to accomplish with soil health and our management system. So the objectives of today's module are these three: list and explain the soil health principles, which we will do. We're going to identify and explain how conservation practices address soil health principles, and then we'll go over some core soil health practices that are prevalent in your region there in Delaware. This next slide, I'm going to ask for some participation from the group, and if you will, just take a moment to think about some general characteristics of cultivated soils.
Working aggregates.
Compaction.
A lower residue.
Elevated soil temperatures.
Okay, thanks. So here are some that certainly all those that you mentioned are characteristics of cultivated systems, but overall, here are some others as well to add to that list. We have reduced water infiltration and storage, and that ties back to the broken aggregates for sure. We have reduced or diminished biological activity and diversity, and I know that that you heard quite a bit about that in the previous presentation from Willie. But you also have reduced nutrient cycling, and you'll hear more about that in the next module. Someone mentioned higher temperatures, elevated temperatures, and that's certainly an issue. Contribution to plant vigor. We definitely have more erosion potential in these systems where we have cultivation and bare ground, bare soils, and we also have reduced aggregation. So these are just a few. There are many more. I appreciate the responses there. I think we covered them all. Compaction, lower residue, broken aggregates, and elevated soil temperatures is what I had written down here. So obviously these this is the less desirable system. If we have an option to not cultivate soils, and we want to do so. So just as a reminder here, and I see this every day in my neck of the woods, we have folks that like to run a vertical till tool over their ground ahead of most of their crops, and their production really hasn't diminished over the years. But the reason why is they are propped up by increased technology, improved varieties, crop varieties, increasing the yield potential for those, higher labor, more fuel, more nutrients being applied, pesticides, and of course water as well. So that's a struggle, and I'm still struggling with that here just with my neighbors, and trying to encourage them to implement some soil health management systems, ideas and strategies versus their conventional ways. So the challenge is, and you have seen this earlier today, but I want to put this graphic up again, is we have a historic loss of soil carbon in a conventional system. And even with reduced tillage, we can get some of that back, but that, as we have seen, that is not the entire solution to the problem. We have other aspects of soil health management that we need to incorporate to expedite this process. But we can restore our soils, and the potential is about 40% of the pre-cultivation soil carbon for this area. And this was taken, I believe this was in the U.S. Corn Belt, Great Plains area. In general, the carbon content of soil organic matter is about 58%, and you all know that soil organic matter is a key indicator of soil quality. So is it possible that we can regain soil function and still be able to address resource concerns, reduce inputs, and maintain or increase agricultural productivity? And the answer in my experience is yes. Is it yes to all of these? Is it possible to achieve all three? We certainly believe so, but soil health and following the principles of soil health is the path to that. So when we talk about soil health principles, these are the four that we are going to cover in detail today. And we'll start with minimizing disturbance. And I want to be sure that this comes across in the message today, that we've got multiple types of disturbance, and not all disturbance is necessarily bad for the system. We do want to minimize it, but some disturbance, and we'll talk more about that later, some disturbance is essential for us to achieve some of the other principles and to incorporate and implement some of the practices that we're going to talk about. So when we talk about minimize disturbance, we're looking at physical, chemical, and biological disturbance. And we'll talk more about that in some future slides here. The next principle that we're going to talk about is maximize living cover. And really this should read maximize living and dead cover. We certainly want to maximize living cover, but residue as well of previous crops or material that we apply, that is also part of that cover and should be maintained and promoted. The next principle that we are going to cover is maximize biodiversity, and this is introducing greater temporal and spatial diversity with plants. This is also where we would introduce livestock into the system. We would integrate livestock into whatever cropping system or proper management of those livestock in our grazing systems. And the fourth principle that we're going to talk about today is the maximize continuous living roots. And this is dependent upon climate and the cropping system, but we do want to maximize the time and the distribution of living roots in the system. And let me go back. We do want to focus on this as Willie talked about earlier. We do want to talk about this as a soil ecosystem. So I want you to keep that in mind as we progress through these slides as well. So soil health principles to support high functioning soils here. We have compartmentalized these into two sections: a feeding side of the shop and a protection side of the shop. And so we're going to break these down and talk about each one of these. As I mentioned, biology is very important, and in the preceding module, you heard about the benefits of a balanced and stable microbial community, and soil organisms are driving those benefits. And again, the principles, we want to view these through the lens of the soil ecosystem. So on the feeding side, you can see there fuel soil biology, as I mentioned, improve resilience, improve soil organic matter. I've got improved nutrient cycling here as well. On the protection side, we want to protect those aggregates. We want to encourage additional microorganism and macroorganism habitat, and also try to improve soil organic matter and thus protecting it. We also, I see more and more, I think y'all are as well, extreme weather events, and the protection side is going to be vital for that, where we have intense rainfall events. We have drought in some parts of the country. We're usually blessed on the eastern side of the country with adequate rainfall. We don't get that in opportune times throughout the year, but we do typically get enough to produce whatever crop or management system that we're pursuing. So we're going to talk about the protection side first, and I'm not going to read all these verbatim here, but certainly we want to maintain those stable aggregates. And the second bullet here is what I've struggled with the majority of my career here in working in Tennessee is soil erosion. And we're in some of the most erosive soils in the world, and the amount of rainfall that we get a lot of water erosion, and you've got to get that in check, obviously, before you can really make headway on with soil health, because obviously if the soil is moving around in the field or leaving the farm entirely, through a waterway or a stream, a creek, you obviously are not going to be able to improve soil health on that particular part of the topsoil. It is gone and won't be back more than likely in our lifetime. So we certainly want to focus on that. And we've talked about temperature earlier, and organic matter is so important. We want to protect that as well.
Let's dig into the soil here a little bit and just see what is our number one principle of keeping the soil covered. What's that doing for us as we dig into the soil? First of all, it's a really hot day. It's been dry, and the shovel went in the ground. So that's always positive.
Let's talk about another one of our principles of minimizing disturbance. So what's that clean slice right there by your right hand?
We've got a clean slice here where we've already side dressed the nitrogen in there. So we have a very, very minimal disturbance where we deposited our side dressed nitrogen. We're spoon feeding nitrogen to this corn crop, getting it below the soil residue so that this high carbon can't be tying up that nitrogen. The other thing that we're really by having no disturbance, notice that this soil is not crusted. It has a lot of architecture to it. We can see soil aggregates right at the surface that's going to be ready to take water in. And so when we talk about soil health, why we're even interested in soil health is protecting soil function. So when rain is scarce, we want every drop to be able to go into the soil exactly where that drop of rain landed. If it has the opportunity to go in and into the matrix of the soil, now it's eventually going to be available to this corn crop. Even in a dry period, this soil is moist. There's plenty of moisture because it's like a sponge. We've got a soil that in a dry, hot time crumbles apart easily in your hand. We could probably go to a very close by field, and to break that soil in your hand, you'd almost bring blood. You know, it would almost cut your hand. So this is a soil that we've built some aggregate stability. It's got tilth. This is the kind of granular structure that we're really striving to get back into these soils. So we've covered two of the primary principles, and so now, adding this cool season grass, in a corn bean rotation, that's not very diverse. So what do you do to finish and add diversity? One of our third principle.
We do have wheat in our rotation that we'll harvest 1st of July, and then we'll put a multi-species 6, 8, 10-way mix out as well.
That's going to provide additional food and more high quality food for the organisms that live in the soil. When it comes to disturbance, talk to me about chemical disturbance.
When we planted this farm green and we crimped it right away, we just made the decision that we were just going to spray Roundup to help terminate the cereal rye and just see what happened. And we had a really, really clean field. I came back and side dressed, and we just started seeing little bitty water hemp. And so we decided we needed to spray to terminate the water hemp. But within that, we were able to pull out 2 major products that actually cost us about $15.75 an acre, and the cover crop cost was about $5.40. So that was essentially a $10 benefit to us right off the bat.
So when we talk about disturbance and minimizing disturbance as our first principle that we want to look at in depth here, we want to focus again, as I said, on the excessive disturbance, the chronic disturbance, if you will, and that level of disturbance destroys habitat for soil organisms, and it destroys those aggregates. It destroys the soil structure, and I mentioned earlier that we have 3 main types of disturbance that are common across agriculture, and I'll list a few of those here and some specific examples under each category here, but under the physical, we have tillage. And if you look at the photo at the bottom of the slide there, there's some examples of that. And certainly we are past the plowing days on most operations, but we do, as I mentioned earlier, we do see a lot of vertical tillage, and those folks have done an excellent job marketing those tools. And in some instances, folks think that they're actually a conservation tool, but it's a struggle for me to see when you make 3 or 4 passes across the field how that can be tied to anything on the conservation side. That's a positive. But I do want to emphasize that again, that some disturbance is needed and may be beneficial to the system. If you look at the low disturbance drill, you obviously are disturbing the soil surface there, but that is the benefits outweigh the negatives on that, because you are going to get a stand of whatever, hopefully get a stand of whatever vegetation you're planting there, and contribute to the other principles in the soil health management system. So I do want to focus on that. Also, a couple other types of disturbance are chemical in nature. These are the fertilizer, over application of fertilizer or pesticides, soil amendments. That also can be a disturbance to the system and provide negative interactions or impacts to the soil. And then third, from a biological standpoint, grazing or non-grazing. We battle overgrazing and higher stocking rates than should be on a particular parcel or paddock, and that can contribute to a high level of disturbance, especially during certain times of the year where the soils may be wet and compaction follows and other issues, bare ground as well. Fallow is another system here that we want to try to avoid, and we'll talk more about that as we move through. But those are the types of disturbance and why we should minimize disturbance. So I'll pause here just a moment. I'm not going to ask for any interaction here, but just think to yourself and think about practices that in your state, in your area, that would minimize disturbance. And we'll go through a few of those here. Here are some practices that minimize disturbance. We look at residue and tillage management and cropping systems, a no-till or reduced till option there. Conservation cover, that's where we sow down a permanent cover. It's a 10-year practice lifespan there. So that's certainly, once it's established, disturbance would be reduced there. And then looking at 590 and 595, those both, if we utilize those properly, we are reducing disturbance. And then, as I mentioned earlier, prescribed grazing, we either intensive, where we're flashing them in and bringing them out quickly, or we're just maintaining that desired plant height of the species that we're grazing, and that by having that not get below that certain height by that standard, that thus is producing more cover, more protection, and in essence we are reducing the amount of disturbance there due to animals being present on that part of the farm. I've got a graphic here, and I hope that this has come up on your end. You should be seeing a soil respiration illustration here from March to the end of March to the 1st of October there. Microbial activity is on the y-axis and time of year is on the x-axis there. And you see that spike. I think you've seen this graphic as well, or will. If you haven't, you'll see this again. But you see that spike in microbial activity there in respiration, and that's due to a high level of disturbance, more than likely a heavy tillage pass there, and that has introduced oxygen into the system, and that has probably a heavy bacterial flush there, and that caused that spike. And if you see that would not be a balanced approach. You want a more level or even amount of respiration during the growing period, and again that in that conventional example that I showed there, you've got a flush of that and then it tapers off. You want to be more like this no-till system where it's more even throughout the growing season. So you should be seeing here some 4 photographs at the bottom of the slide, and the question, why maximize soil cover? These photos were taken in northeast Iowa, and they're basically at a 4-way stop. And you can look at 3 of these photos have something in common, and the one in the upper left looks like to me that it's got something a little different going on here, and you can attribute that to some adjustments in management, but because they all would have received the same amount of rainfall, the same duration timing, you would assume, again, being here at this 4-way stop. So why do we want to maximize soil cover? Well, we can reduce erosion. Obviously, from these photos, we have increased infiltration. We don't see the water standing in that upper left photo. The evaporation is reduced. We talk about those temperatures. We want to moderate those temperatures. Our habitat for soil organisms have increased. The food is also increasing. And then certainly if we have livestock involved, we reduce the potential for compaction. Also from machines as well. If someone was going to try to come in either of the 3 fields there where the water is standing, we would obviously have issues there with the traffic. And there's no doubt you'd be able to get in the field in the upper left sooner than you would these other fields, because there's just not that water is not sitting on top of the surface and not able to infiltrate through the aggregates into the profile. I have added a couple of local photos here from my experience in working with producers here in Tennessee. And this photo here, these photos on the right-hand side of the slide, if you flip-flop them as you move down the slide, but starting at the top left photo, these are from an adaptive management project through EQIP, where this producer replicated these plots across I think it was an 8-acre field. And he incorporated into his cotton, corn, soy, and wheat rotation, he incorporated a winter cover every fall when he didn't have wheat, and he incorporated in one of the plots, one of the replications, which he did 4 times across this field, he incorporated a 10-way blend summer cover crop mix, and then subsequently followed that up with a winter cover. So in that year, he went from wheat to a summer mix, 10-way blend, and then he went to a 5-way winter mix, all in that same year. So you can imagine the amount of biomass was increased, the amount of root activity, microbial growth as well was increased in those plots where he had all those covers. So what you're seeing here is this is a long-term 20+ year no-till field. This producer, prior to starting this project, he had been no-tilling his crops for many years here. So it's not like we're seeing a conventional system. It's a pretty good system. But the photo on the top left is the high biomass, multi-cover crop, multi-species plot, and then the photo on the right is a no-till plot. So if you come down to the bottom photograph, just flip-flop that. The left-hand side is another replication of no-till. The right-hand photograph is the high biomass cover crop. So if you see the amount of water, this was during, I think, a 3.5 inch rainfall event, and these plots, same soil, same everything, they're side by side, if you see the difference there, it's pretty impressive to see how much impact this experiment showed on water infiltration with all conditions being the same except the management and the incorporation of a cover crop into the system, multiple cover crops into the system. So pretty telling photograph here. I just wanted to share that with you. It's one that I try to incorporate where I can because of the visual impact it makes. Another one here, same producer, shared these with me as well. And we haven't talked a lot about this, but looking at weed control and specifically looking at disturbance. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing a soybean row planted into a heavy biomass cover. I think this was a crimped rotor crimper cover, but if you notice, he's got a lot of weed pressure where that row cleaner opened up that furrow, that residue was moved to plant the soybean crop. That's Palmer amaranth, which is a real concern for row crop operators because of the resistance problem and just the high amount of growth that they present. So you see that weed is all, well, it's just about to overtop that soybean plant. So certainly an issue there. But if you notice on the adjacent areas, you don't have that amount of weed pressure. In fact, you don't have any that I can see that's not in that row. So I just wanted to show this to you as well, and just to get you thinking about that level of disturbance and what we can encounter from a weed perspective as well. So we've talked about disturbance. We're going to talk about, we got 3 more here. We want to look at what practices maximize soil cover. So I'll give you just a second here to be thinking about that, and we'll talk about those as well. So when we think about maximizing soil cover, what's the first thing that should come to mind? That would be our cover crop practice 340. That's one that we should try to incorporate as often as we can, but we also have other practices and these working as a system. And I like that cover crop, no-till, and crop rotation together as a system, and those work really well together. I hope you're considering that suite of practices when you're trying to address multiple resource concerns, but certainly the soil health resource concerns. But here again, we've got conservation cover on this list as well, mulching, controlled traffic here, 334 in maximizing soil cover, and then the last 2, 512, 528, looking at planting and the prescribed grazing of those species as well. All right. Switching sides of the circle here, the sphere, we're going to look at the feeding side. So we've got looking at maximizing living roots and then maximizing biodiversity. And I want to be sure that I mention this. So I want to emphasize that the appropriate implementation of each of the principles into a system help achieve the desired soil function benefits. And just planting cover crops, for example, and continuing to till in a continuous corn system is not going to get us where we need to be. Certainly it's better than not planting a cover crop at all, but we need to incorporate all the principles as much as we can to get us to where we need to be from a soil health standpoint. So looking at the feeding set of principles, we want to stimulate that below ground diversity. We talked about that. Again, soil organic matter, we want to increase that, nutrient cycling, and we want to break pest cycles with these principles as well, and increase predator and pollinator populations where we can. How do we maximize living roots? This is a photo of a brassica on the left-hand side, cover crop, no doubt. So how do we maximize living roots? I'll pause for just a second and let you be getting some ideas together. Certainly, as I mentioned, cover crop is one of those flagship items here that we want to consider, and we want to grow crops in the off season. We want to avoid that fallow period and reduce the time between recropping intervals if we're in a cropping system. We want to incorporate, if we can, the time that we have in perennial crops. In perennial crops, we don't have a recropping interval. It's in continuous growth. Looking at the 327 practice, the 512 practice, those are practices that we would that certainly would maximize living roots. And so what practices? I've already mentioned a couple of those. Certainly conservation crop rotation and bringing in different types of crops as we move through our system. Again, 327, 340, 512, 528. You notice there's a continuing trend. A lot of these practices address multiple principles, and certainly those are things that strategies that we want to incorporate for our producers, but also these practices that address multiple resource concerns certainly help us when we're, I don't talk about programs a whole lot here, but as we work through CART, that those are practices that are going to give us those increased point thresholds. So how do we maximize biodiversity? This is our fourth principle that we're going to talk about. We grow diverse cover crops, and we add legumes and brassicas to those systems. We increase the diversity of our crop rotations. We want to incorporate crops that have higher residue. We certainly want to consider integrating livestock, and this is something that I know that we need to talk about and work on. I know there are some states out there, I'm not sure where Delaware is, but that they don't allow livestock to graze any cover crops that are that have been utilized through a program. So that we need to educate folks, continue to educate our folks and our internal and external customers on the integration of livestock. We also want to increase the time that we have in a diverse perennial crop. We talked about that as well in the previous slide. So what practices here? Where you're going to see some repeat here, but we have some of the same practices that address the other principles are also listed here. Conservation crop rotation, cover crop 340, 512, 528, and integrated pest management here 595. So we've talked about the principles. We've talked about how practices interact with those principles. So I want to look at and do some core practice review. And this is where in the last few slides here, I would like for us to have some class participation. So we're going to go through these, each of these practices. I think there's 9 practices that I've got listed, and I talked with Jamie about the core practices that Delaware implements, and this pretty much covers them. We will have some time. If there's something else that you want to talk about, we certainly can go over that. But we want to look at conservation crop rotation. So what we're looking for here is how many of these boxes that we can check besides each principle. So for conservation crop rotation, how many of these do you think that we can benefit?
The diversity.
So that's diversity.
Root system.
Got cover as well. I heard it last minute. You got it in before the buzzer. Good deal. So yeah, certainly we've got with the conservation crop rotation, we've got cover benefits, diversity, and maximizing that living root as well. So and the photo there is flax and chickpeas added to a wheat rotation. As a producer, adds different crops into rotation, wheat or small grains. For example, the 328 practice can add cover to that system. So we want to consider adding a higher residue choice into that rotation where we can. cover is increased when high residue crops are a higher percentage of the rotation. So a slide over, for the sake of time here, a slide over to conservation cover 327. So this photo is using perennial plants in a vineyard. And so which of the principles here or all of them addressed with 327? What do you think?
You think it's all four?
All four.
Did I hear an all four, Jamie?
Yeah, Matt, Andrew indicated all four are checked off for conservation cover.
Perfect. We've eliminated the mechanical disturbance. We may have some grazing in some of these type systems here, burning possibly, but we're not going to have the level of disturbance that we have. We certainly have the cover. We've got the soil covered every day of the year. We've got diversity if we plant a perennial mix, and we've got living roots throughout the year as well. So that's an excellent practice that addresses all four of the principles. So sliding over to the last one on this slide here, we've got cover crop. What does the audience think on cover crop?
I want to say all four again.
Well, and I think that's arguable, but the three that we for sure get is cover, obviously through that time period. We have diversity if we plant a multi-species mix, and we have that living root. The reason why this disturbance is not checked here is cover crop is a 1-year practice, and we typically have to do some type of disturbance to get it planted. Now you can argue there that an aerial seeded cover crop is not incorporated into the soil surface. So again, that could go either way. But the three for sure that we address are cover, diversity, and roots.
I'd like to mention that here we do a lot of aerial seedings for cover crops, so we would have minimal disturbance.
Excellent. And again, I think that's a great point, and certainly a great option. If you have adequate moisture, that's a good way to go for sure. It allows you to get started earlier in some situations as well if you're flying it on into a standing crop, which I assume that you guys do that as well.
Matt, we actually have people that are actually flying on using airplanes, and then we also have an air seeder that's being used locally as well to put it on in standing corn too. So those are a couple options here.
Works very well. That's and again, we've had good success with that. We've had some train wrecks as well where we've had low moisture. We didn't get the desired result. But if you have adequate moisture, that's an excellent way to get the cover crop established. Moving on here, we've got 3 more practices. Looking at residue management, we're talking about 329, 345, so reduced or no-till. All right, well, let's just move on through here. We've got reduced disturbance, increased cover, and diversity if we don't have that tillage taking place. So those 3 are for sure principles that are addressed by minimizing disturbance. Looking at mulching, we've got 3 there as well. So the same 3: disturbance, cover, and diversity. This is again a 1-year practice here. Adding mulch into a system, and I know we wouldn't do this, organic systems possibly where we have areas of disturbance, but it's certainly an option for us as well. If we incorporate that mulching into the system, then we obviously the disturbance box wouldn't be checked. So again, you can look at site-specific situations here and uncheck or check these boxes. The last one on this slide is 590, and that's just going to check one box there on the disturbance side in most situations. A low level of management would be applying high levels of chemical fertilizer, and then a high level of nutrient management utilizing the 4 Rs. We could add carbon amendments throughout the growing season, and as these improve, we move to a more biological system and get away from that chemical system. By doing that, we're going to have more support and diversity of organisms, both macro and micro. All right, the last set of practices here that I want to spend a few minutes on is looking at first prescribed grazing. So does anyone want to venture a guess on how many of the principles prescribed grazing addresses? And there can be an all of the above. Anybody wants to guess that?
Matt, I'm going to say all the above.
All right, you got it. Got it. For sure. So prescribed grazing, we've got improved activity from manure, proper distribution of manure. We've got diversity of soil organisms. We've got managed forage heights that promote deeper rooting, higher level of residues on the surface. We should have reduced chemical and mechanical disturbance with prescribed grazing as well. Looking at pasture and hayland planting, all four as well. We do have one caveat on the disturbance side. You notice the photo there from Ohio State. They obviously tilled that field there. So disturbance may or may not be checked depending on the way in which the practice is established. And then finally, looking at IPM, we've got two that we can check in most situations, looking at disturbance and diversity. And we're encouraging a greater diversity of soil organisms, and we're typically reducing the amount of chemicals applied, therefore reducing disturbance. So I appreciate the interaction, folks, with that. I've got, this is my next to last slide here. I just want to re-emphasize what we talked about with the principles and objectives of this module in delivering the principles, identifying, explaining how conservation practice interact, and then going through some core practices in your region. Were there any other practices that you would like to discuss that you're doing there in the state that we didn't cover?
Hi, Matt. Just a quick question. In Delmarva, I feel like we're pretty far advanced with soil health generally across this area. But one thing that, I know for myself and some others we could learn more about is the chemical disturbance piece that you brought up, and just, what synthetic commercial fertilizers do for soil health and application of fungicides, things like that, is a piece of the puzzle that we could really use some help with in Delmarva, because I think we do a pretty good job educating our producers about, maximizing roots, minimizing disturbance, but those pieces as far as what we're doing with our fertilization and our pesticide programs, we could use some additional help with that part, educating.
Sure thing. And I have made a note of that, and I'll follow up with Jamie on that. We do have some additional courses that we're working on that would dive into a more advanced discussion of these topics. So be on the lookout for that. But as far as my observations and what I've seen, looking at from a fertilizer standpoint, you certainly would want to encourage the proper implementation or utilization of animal manures. If you're not able to integrate livestock onto the operation, the second best option is to incorporate some type of litter or manure to the operation. Again, following all the proper setbacks and manure sample analysis and that type of information there. But that's something that I think that folks do a fair job with. And then on the pesticide side and fungicide aspects, the folks that we have worked with that are really progressive, these early adopters, maybe in year 10 of a high level of soil health management, they are seeing, and you probably are seeing there in Delaware, reduced amounts of pesticides needed to fight whatever pests they're pursuing. And a lot of our producers have gotten away from fungicides entirely. and are looking at seed treatments, getting away from crops as well, and are being successful with that. So certainly, I know that we're limited on time today. I will follow back up with Jamie on some more information on this. I appreciate you bringing this up, and there's certainly a lot of information that we could tap into to expand that. Looking at that amount, I mean, the farming out of a jug. If you've heard that, and that, you know, that saying, that's not the best way to go if you're trying to increase sustainability and soil health on these farms.
Thanks, Matt. One of the other topics that came up during team discussion was the use of liquid carbon sources. We've got several producers here in the state that are using liquid carbon sources. So any additional information we can get on that would be great as well, because we are seeing that being used by quite a few folks, and some of them are our soil health champions here in the state. So it would be great to get additional information. It seems like to me, last time I looked, there wasn't a lot of research out there. So it'd be kind of interested to see how that plays in, and kind of how we're going to address that moving down the road as well.
Certainly, I've got that added to the list, Jamie. We'll follow back up with you and get you some information, get you in touch with some folks if need be.
Anything else, guys, before we let Matt go? All right. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Y'all have a good rest of your training.